So as a follow-up to the last video where I basically did an overview of the assessment and said how to start the thing, here is a look at how it is marked and the rubric and what that actually means and how you can get certain grades and how this assessment is designed so you can actually get to a certain point, and then from then on the assessment will really decide whether people are able to get the higher grades. So in other words, what I'm talking about, in order to get to the minimum grades, what I mean by minimum grades is like C or D, sort of CD level, you're going to need to do a number of things. So let's have a look at this data representation. This talks about Unicode and do you understand Unicode? Show that you can understand it. So in order to get to a C, it says show some understanding of how data is stored and presented using Unicode, but is incomplete and inaccurate. So just by using odd and char or chr, then even if you didn't get them to work right, you'd still get to C. Okay, so that bit there is where I'd expect you to use odd and chr, and if you've got it and it doesn't quite work, you've at least got to C. If you do get it to work or sort of work, then you'd be into B there. Okay, but if you get it fully to work, you'd immediately go into A. So that's quite a gift in a way because it's all there for you in Grok. All right. Iteration and branching, this is where it starts to get a little bit hard. So in order to get to C in here, students provide a Python program that uses either an iteration, in other words, a loop, which is for and while, or they can use branching, which is an if statement. So you either do one or the other without any errors to get to there. So if all you did was included if statements in there, but you didn't include any for or whiles, and you could get it to work, you get into the C grade. If you tried it but it didn't work, either of those things, and but errors remain, as it says there, you go into D in there. So it's harder to get into the higher grades in there. If you want to get into the higher than C grade there, there'd be some errors, but you've had a decent go at it there. But you have to use both iteration and branching. So both in either a for or a while loop and an if statement. Okay, again, functions is a difficult one. This is where you have to use the separate functions. That's that def for defining something, the name of the function, and the parameters you're going to pass through it. Okay, to get to the C, provides a Python program that defines and uses one or more functions. So you only have to use one to get to C, but some use is either inappropriate or there are some errors. Okay, so if you have a basic attempt at something, but it's quite obvious you've not a lot of idea of what you're doing in terms of functions, then you get into D. If you have a decent attempt at it, but there's still some errors, then you could get into C there. So it's not that hard, I'd say, to get to C in terms of functions. But to actually get functions to work, there may be some inappropriate use or there's some errors coming up. They're not quite doing what they're supposed to do, but it looks like you really know what you're doing with them. You've just left some errors in there, or they're not quite managed what they're supposed to be doing. Then that get you into B grade. And then we come into the last two. Now, the last two are there on a plate for you. Okay, testing I'm going to talk about in a minute because I'll show it on a separate document. The last one, meeting deadlines, basically says this. Whatever deadline you have been set, if you hand it in 1 minute after that deadline, your grade will go down by 1 grade. So if you are on, say, B, like here, and here for every other thing, then you will go down to B minus. If you hand it in another day late, it go down another grade, and so on and so on and so on. It can't go up by meeting the deadline, if that makes sense. So let's talk about testing, the last one on there. This is about testing your work. You're going to test as you go along. Every time you run that program, you are testing what you have done. So the document you're going to use, which is given to you on your sector, is this document here. Okay, so on this document here, first of all, I want you to paste the link from your REPL. Your teacher will show you how to do that in the lesson. Basically, it's the thing that appears in the top corner on your REPL. I shall just bring that example of Grok across that I had on before in the last video, that one there. So if I wanted to get the link to this, it's not what's in the address bar at the top. I'd go invite and I'd come down to here. That there is what I copy across. I'll just get rid of this. Okay, and I'd paste that into there when I hand it in. So you hand in just this document with that link on in there, and then the test table here. So you want the details of the test you've done, the results that it's come up with, and then any improvements you're made. Obviously, if the test works, there won't be any improvements that you've made. So you just put none and you don't need a screenshot. But I don't want 6 tests or however many I've put in here, at least 6 I'd be looking for really. I don't want like 6 tests that all work. That's pointless because that's just not true. You'll have errors coming up. So here's an example of the sort of thing it's going to look like. And this is taken from last year's TechStep lecture or whatever it was that we did last year, one of the things, or one of the phone things I did. So if you look at that one there, look, there's no screenshots and no improvement made. So it actually worked what I was trying to do. This one, testing spelling, grammar, and punctuation. Let me know, can I help you? Choose the option from unwanted space before comma. So there's an unwanted space before the comma on that one there. So then I remove the space. You can see the screenshot of it where I use the snipping tool to get that screenshot, and you can see how the comma appeared after the name there. And in the second one, when I fixed it, it didn't. So there's it before, and there's it afterwards. There's it fixed. So that's an example. So you want some decent examples. You really want some that include some errors in your code where you've got errors up and then you've tried to fix them. So as you're getting errors, you just dump in screenshots into there and put in a brief note as to what you've done in that table and then fixing those errors as you go along. So that gives you an idea how to get some grades or up your grade on this particular assessment task.